Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. For those of you around the world listening in here at the 500 Doors Real Estate Podcast, I'm Kim Hayden, your host. And first, I want to say thank you. I want to thank you for sharing your number one most valuable resource. It's totally non renewable, your time. This is important, and you're taking your time to share it here. And I promise you today, we've got a master Jedi on the show today. Somebody who lives and breathes real estate and has done it for a long time. So, seen a lot of trends and shifts, has seen high markets and low markets. And who better to have on the show here at 500 Doors Real Estate than somebody who knows how to weather whatever market we encounter. John Mayfield received his real estate license in 1978 at the age of 18. John has been a practicing broker since 1981 and has owned and operated as many as 3 offices in Southeast Missouri during his real estate career. John has spoken to thousands of real estate professionals in over 25 countries throughout his speaking career. He is the author of 8 books and creator of the 5 Minute series for real estate agents. John lives and breathes real estate and is the current Missouri Realtor president. Let's welcome John into the studio, which is as easy as clicking a button. You gotta love technology.
Yeah,
Not not like when you started real estate, eh, John?
that's right. Yes. I was thinking about that yesterday. I was attending a Missouri Real Estate Commission instructors workshop, and I thought, this is my 35th year. I started teaching real estate in 1987 and was just thinking back about how things have changed with technology and, the way we used to have to practice real estate because we thought the fax machine was like the coolest thing ever, and I was laughing because I thought there were brokers who you would have a contract and you would call, you would try to fax it over and they would say, "Hello, hello," and they would realize it was a fax and they had to like punch a button and or run over and plug the fax machine in, and it's like, times
Oh
have
yeah.
changed. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I do know a few agents who still have a few brokerages that still have a fax machine
Yeah.
on there,
Yeah, and
which is
and I do
hilarious.
too, but you think about, I mean, I remember when I would teach Palm Pilot courses, and people in the room would just say, "How did he do that?" And they would be so amazed, but yeah, I love technology, and I think that as real estate professionals, we have to be willing to adapt to
Yeah,
changes.
absolutely. I mean, I came into the industry in '99, and I remember starting when we had the books that would come out every
Right.
Monday.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, and that was around. I was literally at the cusp of when we were moving from the books to a program, so not the internet but a program. So I get it. I do sometimes miss my forms in with the carbon copies and where we would sit on the
Right.
curb and at 11 o'clock at night, and because I you got to meet so many people in person,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
you
you
did.
know
And a
I
lot of people don't realize, I mean, at one time, just what you said, our listing contract was 1 page or the sales contract was 1 page, and you would write a contract on the hood of your car, and, it was like it was those were different days, but
very different days, very tactile days.
yes.
I'd like to go through. It's interesting because you started real estate at 18, and one of my favorite real estate coaches, Brian Buffini, who I have followed through, I would say the majority of my career, started at 18 also. So there must be some sort of magic in just knowing at an early age. Can you share with us a little bit, John, who you are? Who are
Yeah,
you?
okay, so my mother, it's kind of interesting, when I was 13, 14, my dad had been transferred to the city, and, of course, I live in a rural community. My sisters and I, we were all so excited because we were moving to the city, and so we had found a house and everything. My mother was a bookkeeper at the school, and my dad's store did so well that they offered him a local closer store to manage because that manager had left. So my mom and dad were so excited. They said, "We're not going to move." And I remember we were so distraught because we wanted to move to the big city. So my mom had to get a new job and she got her real estate license. So, like most real estate professionals, at one point she decided to open her own company and she did. And I actually started by going around and taking pictures with a Polaroid camera, and we would shake it like a Polaroid picture, pull it up. And I put signs up and put pictures and listen to a lot of, I know you're up in Canada now, listen to all my favorite Canadian rock groups like Rush and, April Wine and different ones.
Lover Boy, who's doing
Y
another tour.
That's right, yeah. And so, literally, when I turned 18, Missouri changed the law to where you only had to be 18 to get your license, and my mom told me, and I said, "Okay, I think I'll get my license," and back in 78, 79, 80, I mean, you could make good money, and I was, like, knocking it out of the park as a newer agent. It took me a little while to get going, and then interest rates went up, and I had my sights set on Hollywood. I wanted to go into broadcasting and film, and so I'm away at college, and my mom, I remember calling home, and interest rates are like 20%, and everybody was getting out of the business, and I said, "I can come home and help you out," which I did, and, just fell in love with real estate and decided to switch majors to business, and, here I am 44 years later.
Wow, 44 years. I mean, let's just put this into perspective. According to the National Association of Realtors, the average real estate career is 7 years.
Yeah,
If you make it past the 87% washout rate in the first 36 months. So 44 years, I mean, that's legendary. Let's I would love to dive into a little bit of what you do because we know that you have a school, you are a professional speaker, you are a published author multiple times, and you are now the president of the Missouri Real Estate Association, correct?
that's
So
correct, yeah.
that's amazing. And just so everybody knows that I live in Canada, but from Wichita, Kansas. So Missouri was like the Ozarks were, growing up, our
Right,
backyard.
yeah.
So I love Missouri. It's a beautiful, beautiful state. I think is it Missouri where there's actually Uranus, Missouri,
There is, yes, I'll be
and they have
driving
a
by
big
it this
fudge
week. Yeah, off
factory.
off 44, that's right.
Sorry, I saw
Yeah,
somebody. I so digress. That's
I
so
could tell.
childish
I
of me. The
yeah,
best fudge comes from Uranus, Missouri. Is I
yeah,
saw somebody's T-shirt, and it's like, okay.
I
So
think, there's a story behind why the owner put that store in. I think he was mad at the city for
that
they
is
had expand
hilarious.
anyway, we won't go into that, but,
But that is
yeah,
hilarious. But
but,
every state has a funny story. Every
yeah,
state
it
has
does.
a powerful story. I That's the beauty of the United States is, and actually every country. If you truly look for the beauty and the brilliance within the spaces that we live, it's there.
Yeah,
There
it
it's
is.
there.
It's
So
what's funny, and I've been very blessed, and thank you for those kind comments. A lot of what's happened to me has been, hard work, and I'm very a self-motivator, which I think you have to be in good in real estate. You have to just figure things out. Don't sit back and wait. I had Kim on our Missouri Realtors podcast, found her book on Amazon, read some great things, and then listened to your podcast. And I reached out to her, and you were so gracious to come on our podcast. And to me, you gave such valuable content to the listeners about how to grow your real estate business. And what was interesting is I did the same things you did. I just got out and I didn't knock on doors, and I loved how you said that because I always refer to it as knocking on doors, but all I did was, like, go up and put a door hanger on and then try to walk as fast as I could away from the house. So, but people would call me 6 months later and say, I would go out and there would be this wrinkled door hanger that was on that they had and would end up listing their home and then making a friend and doing business with their family members and friends and so forth. But, one of the things you were talking about Missouri, and it's interesting that I have been very blessed to travel, and that's kind of a whole 'nother story, but when I go speak in some of these countries, I try to tell them I'm south of St. Louis and near the Mississippi River and south of Chicago, and then they all say, "Are you close to Branson?" So they all know where Branson, Missouri is. And I remind the Branson, Missouri folks that you've got a real gem because people all over the world know where you're at. And of course, now jokingly, people want to know if I'm near Ozark, where the Ozark.
Yeah.
Uh,
Which we have to clarify was not filmed
that's
in
right.
Missouri. It was
Yeah,
actually filmed in Atlanta predominantly, so
that's
south of
right.
Atlanta. Um, Missouri, just so everybody knows, if you are driving and you want to go to, I think, one of the best tourist centers. Missouri has one of the best tourist centers and one of the nicest group of people. It was a beautiful tourist center. I just actually did a trip 900 kilometers round trip with my husband in our new car. We had just picked up this Buick, a new Buick, because that's what all us old people drive is a Buick because they're reliable and they're cost effective. So we drove literally from Calgary to Atlanta and ended up going through Missouri and found their tourist center, awesome tourist center. But Missouri's rich, like it is rich in history. There's some really crazy cool stuff that's happened in Missouri.
Yeah,
Let's
so you went very close to where I live, probably went down through, if you went down through Missouri or part of Illinois, so I'm
Yep.
close to the Mississippi River.
Yeah, we actually crossed the Mississippi River. So, which wasn't, it was more brown than a blue, just saying. The Mississippi is, that's why they call it the muddy Mississippi. Like
That's
when you
right.
witness it first time, you go, oh, okay. Um, let's go
But,
through.
people probably think that, oh, they hear all of these things that I've done, and sometimes I look back and I kind of have those, It's a Wonderful Life moments where I'm, sitting on the bridge looking down thinking, what have I done in my life? You get discouraged and have one of those moments and it's like, I have had some challenges. One of the things that you mentioned that I've spoken in 25 countries. Well, what people don't realize is just before that, in 2006, right before the downturn, I sold my real estate company to go to work for a bank. And so my wife and I had purchased a pick your own blueberry blackberry farm. We built our dream home. We have 80 acres sitting on top of a hill. People come out, pick blueberries once a year. So I sold my company. I'm living the dream, build our dream home. I'm going to work for the bank. And in a matter of a couple of months, we had a late spring freeze, lost our entire crop, thought I had crop insurance until the insurance adjuster came out and said, no, if you look on this page, you
Hmm.
haven't owned the farm for 5 consecutive years, so we can only give you $4,000. And, then I go into work, Kim, and the bank I went to work for was on this thing called the watch list, and I ended up unemployed with a non-compete clause and no crop, and I'm $1,000,000 in debt, and that's when I do my Steve Martin, "Hey, kids, we're having fun now." So, anyways, but,
That's when you wishing the arrow was real,
yeah,
not
but
just a headband.
my wife and I literally sold everything we had, and, we moved into a two-bedroom apartment in LA, Lower Arnold, Missouri, and that gets a great laugh when I teach in St. Louis, but, literally had to start over, and
At
I was
what
speaking
age was
at
that?
a yeah. What was
What
that?
age? What age was that?
That would have been when I was 50. That was in 2007, so I'd have been 57.
57. Okay. And
Yeah.
I think this is important for us to track here because here's the reality. We are facing hard times. There are
Mhm.
going to be hard times, and our clients are going to be facing hard times. So to know that an incredible this man with honestly, John, you resonate with me because I can tell that you care, genuinely care about the
Well, thank
human
you.
element. And to know that he started over at 57 in a two-bedroom apartment with his wife, this is important, folks. So take
Yeah,
us
and
from there, John. This is I want to hear all about this because
so you know, I tell this story when I speak today. I remember that, when my wife and remember at that moment, Kim, when we're like, "Okay, we have no crop. I just lost my job, and I signed this non-compete." And by the way, in 2007, the real estate market was just crashing, and so that's all I knew what to do was sell real estate. That's all I'd ever done. If you know that I got my license when I was 18. So we started selling stuff, and I remember one Sunday night, we had this beautiful sunset on the farm, and these people came out and they were buying stuff. And I remember them driving off with this trailer load of stuff. And I just broke down and cried there on the farm. And then I said, John Mayfield, it's just stuff. You can replace stuff. And if really from that point, I'm not saying I didn't have another pity party, but from that point, I knew that, okay, I just have to get back in the game and get back up and figure out how to survive. I I started doing go-to webinars back then because, in fact, I got in with go-to webinar at such an early point. My subscription was like $40 a month for 10,000 members, and later they raised that fee to a huge price. But I started
yep,
just using my skills and trying to sell real estate and do what I could to survive. And I remembered, so I started speaking a lot more, and I was speaking at a conference on technology, and I was talking about technology in 2008. You have to remember a lot of people still don't get technology today, but back then there were a lot of brokers and agents, and I just felt like a comedian who was just dying on my feet. I thought these people don't like me. They hate what I'm talking about. I'm sweating, and I just kept saying, "John, keep your energy up and finish strong." And so I finished the presentation, and all these people wanted to get in line and talk to me. And the first gentleman in line said, "I'm bringing you to France to speak." And I laughed and said, "Can I bring my wife?" And he said, "Yes, yes." And Kim, he called me 2 weeks later and asked if and we're in an apartment in South St. Louis, and he said, "Can you come and speak?" And, so my wife and I left St. Louis International Airport. All we had in our bank account was $135, and I fly to speak in LA, and they always say you're only one person away from someone who can change your life. And I think we have to remember we are only one person away from someone's life we can change as well.
absolutely.
And so I go over there and speak, and they fell in love with me and asked me to speak in Paris. And then I was asked to speak in Cyprus and then Russia. And that's what led. But the really cool thing is by not giving up and by believing that, to get back in the game, this gentleman, he had no idea about what was going on in my life. He called me and he knew I liked technology, and he said, "Would you want to come to France and live and help me in my real estate office?" And my wife and I are like, "Well, we're not doing a whole lot here." So we packed up and moved to the south of France. And, I always say, I think, God has a real good sense of humor because there I was, probably, as broke as I've ever been in my life, and I'm living in the most richest part of the world on the French Riviera with an apartment looking at the Mediterranean Sea. So that's kinda how I ended up speaking in 25 countries, and I don't tell that story to brag. I just want people to know that we all have hard times and we all have challenges. But if you remain strong and faithful and just roll your sleeves up and keep trying to do what skills you have and what you're good at, you'll come out on the other end okay. And so That's why I'm president this year because I was actually running for president back in 2008. The bank was going to let me be involved with the Realtor Association, and when I was in all of the heat of the battle, I told you I just pulled out of the race because I thought,
Yeah.
I can't do this now. And
The shame and the embarrassment
yeah,
and
exactly.
the just the emotional overload, right?
You're right,
Because
and but it was
running a
cool to think that here I am, in 5960, and my association, the members are like, "We want you to be our president," and voted me in, so, I've just I don't want people I want people to know I've had challenges, but I want them to know you can't focus on those. You just have to, pick up and keep going, so that's kinda John Mayfield in a nutshell.
that you know what? It's so inspiring because the pandemic has I mean, we've had
It
the
has.
pandemic and now we are going I mean, the world is on
Right,
fire. I mean, like, if it's like a dumpster fire right now. There's so much going on. There's you can't go onto the internet or into the news without being inundated with something that scares you. So you
right,
have to create the space yourself of safety. You have
right.
to. And I believe as real estate agents, so, um I love the fact that you're on the technology side, yet we can still talk, right? Because I'm very slow to adopt technology. I'm not, I call it tech intuitive. I'm not a tech intuitive. I can learn it, but it's like
Right.
somebody beating me over the head
Yeah.
with it, right? Whereas I'm people intuitive. I'm community intuitive, and we all have our strengths, and it's the willingness to learn the things that are not comfortable. So it's like that eat the frog first, right?
Right.
um what are so I'd love from because you're like I said, you're the master Jedi here. I would love if an agent right now is sitting here listening to this or listens to this on the podcast when it launches just before Christmas, so just in time to launch your new year in the right way. What is an actionable step that an agent can take that could help lead to solid returns and solid gains? And folks, I'm not talking about listen to this and you'll make $1 million next year.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
talking about real. I'm in the real world. I am not here selling anybody magic beans. I believe that most of us are in the real world. And quite frankly, a quarter of a million a year, which is attainable through real estate sales as a real estate agent, even in down markets by good agents. That is a good life if you manage it and everything goes in your way and it teaches you great lessons. What is something, give me one actionable step that an agent can wake up tomorrow and start implementing?
Yeah, so I listened to this podcast yesterday driving to Jefferson City, and I thought to myself, and it was an old podcast. It was probably 12, 14 years ago. It's a Dan Kennedy. I don't know. Dan has been an online marketer and copywriter, very successful. And so I'm listening to this podcast, and I thought, wow, we forget about that as real estate professionals. And what this gentleman was talking about on Dan's podcast is authority marketing. And what he meant by that is, and he said, and the important part is you have to be the authority in your local marketplace. Don't worry about trying to be the authority to the masses, but if you can, there is so much money to be made in your own local marketplace. And so when he talked about authority marketing, and it was funny because he said there's a lot of agents that even if you're a new agent, you might think, "Oh gosh, I don't have that much authority in real estate." And he made a statement that I thought was a, a quote that I thought was so funny. He said, "In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king." And, a lot of
Oh,
times when I go out to speak on technology and I get nervous, I have to remind myself most of the people in the audience don't know a lot about technology. So what are you worried about? You're the expert here. But think about that as a real estate professional and as farming a neighborhood, going out and leaving door hangers. If you're providing valuable content to people about your local marketplace or about you or the real estate industry, you all of a sudden become the authority for that subdivision or for that local market. So the actionable step I would take is first of all, develop a game plan of news items and information that you can begin distributing in your local area, whether that's on door hangers, whether that's on in postcards, whether you do that on social media using TikTok or Instagram Reels or posts, but you can become an authority expert. And really, when I look back on my career, it's kind of like you're running for political office. It's like if you can get your name and your picture out there, the more you can do of that, the more it helps. I mean, one of the books I wrote, 5 Minutes to a Great Real Estate Letter, I put some press releases in there. And I said, you should put a press release when you go to a conference, or if you go to the National Realtors Conference, send a press release that you attended. I would do things like that, Kim, and the paper would print it. They're always starving for content or information, and someone would have me come out and list their house because they saw that post. And quite frankly, Facebook does the same thing, or Instagram. So that's my advice I would give is
Yep.
really figure out how you can be that local authority expert, and I think
And
that there's some big wins there you can have.
I'm working with a local real estate agent, so I want everybody to close their eyes and visualize this gentleman, and I'm so incredibly honored to be part of his training team because I don't believe you can learn everything you need from one person. I believe that it becomes you need mentors in all sorts of different areas. But this gentleman I'm working with on that community authority, right? So this gentleman has moved from India with a wife and a toddler. They are expecting a second child. He was a doctor. He was a dentist in India. His credentials do not translate here, transfer here, but he's super happy about that because he never really wanted to be a dentist. In different cultures, you are told you're going to
Right,
be a doctor. So pick
right.
which field you want to go into. So here it's opened up everything. Now he has tech. He is tech intuitive. This guy, he's got a contract right now with a tech company helping them. Like he has turned me on to some great apps and programs to help that are really easy to use. But I've been working with him. He's been licensed for 90 days and he just wrote his second offer, all
Wonderful.
from community events. One was a community picnic that he participated in, and one was a community for so one was a geographical community, and that's something that I think we need to talk about is building community. You have your community of geography, your community for him, his community of origin. These are other new Canadians, and we have our communities of interest, our communities of faith. I do an exercise where I need you to identify 12 people that you can reach out and have coffee with in each of your 8 communities. And I believe that we all, because we're all I haven't met a human being that's not like super cool and has something interesting and has a
Right.
unique thing going on. We all have 8 communities within us, right? One is your community of volunteerism. Here's a tip for every person listening, and this is a volunteer.org American stat. 27% of North Americans volunteer, reportedly volunteer. 27%. So if you want to be in the 73% network, right?
Mhm.
Above, if you want to be above 73%, go out and volunteer. And I'm not saying walk in there and sell yourself as a real estate agent. Be the Bob Berg. Give,
Right.
give, give. Know, like, trust. Be part of
Exactly.
that community because most people, most people that we will encounter in our life do not own jets, do
Right.
not own 8 homes. They are building their financial legacy and security and what will take care of them in their old age through what they are asking you for your service in. So I love that the community thing, the authority thing, and you know what? In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. That is brilliant, and
I
I'm
thought that
actually
was so yeah, and, so don't say, "Well, I've only been in the business for a month." You went through a real estate school and you got your exam. You're the one-eyed you're the one-eyed man, so, or woman, and so, don't beat yourself up on that because a lot of people just don't know much about how our business operates and works, and I think that's why try to read and invest back. Try to read an article once a day and subscribe to, listen to podcast. I mean, when I listened to that podcast yesterday, I thought to myself, "Wow, that is so true." And it's kinda what we're trying to say is just be that authority. When you volunteer, when you give back, you'll always receive something back in return. I remember
absolutely.
volunteering at the food pantry, and I need to
Mhm.
get back and start helping them again, but I wanted to give back to the community, and I just wanted to I thought, well, actually, I think they mentioned at Sunday school they needed help moving some cans and things around. Well, yeah, I get there, and there's all these little old ladies that are there who are working. They can't move these big boxes. But little did I know, while we're waiting and handing out food, many of these little ladies who were working there told me they were getting ready to go into an apartment or a condo, and could I help sell their house? So, I
Because
mean,
they
I
no
did.
longer can trust you because you
Yeah.
value what they value,
Yeah, and
right?
so I started doing more transactions from the food pantry, and I didn't that wasn't my intention of helping
No,
the food pantry, but it's just because of the giving back and the volunteering, and like you said, they get to know you, they like you, they trust you, and so there you go, you're earning business.
absolutely. Well, and there's things around brand niche and um like group niche. I want to use the word tribe, but that's not a politically appropriate term. So please, nobody hate me on that. I just don't know a better term. If you do, John, that would be great. But you have these two different things. So we as real estate agents tend to work within that brand niche where we're vomiting real estate all over people, and we put out facts and stats and things that are very intuitive to us because that's the space that we stay within. Whereas when we go to our tribe niche, those are our spheres. So sphere niche, right? So we
Right.
have we have our our industry niche and our sphere niche. And if you're always trying to speak industry language to sphere language, you lose the market. But if you meet your
Yeah.
spheres on their level, you gain their trust, and this
Right.
is really important in a world where people look at things. You can superimpose now through technology somebody saying something. You don't know who to trust, you don't know what to trust. The world's gone a little crazy. Be the voice, be the authority that can be of service to your community, and they will know, like, and trust you.
Right. That's exactly right.
So speaking of community, share with me, because you've talked a lot about community and you've left Missouri and you've come back to Missouri. You talk about your mother and the communities she built through being ground level in people's homes. What is your definition, and what does community mean to you, John?
Yeah, that's a great question. Living in Nice, France, and being in an apartment, looking out at the Mediterranean Sea every day, and traveling. I would get off work, and I told this story the other day to our Missouri realtors as my last little speech at our last fall conference, business conference, and I cried. So I'll try not to cry here, but I remember every day I'd get off work, I'd go by this little bakery and I'd get a baguette and I would give the gentleman €2 and he would keep the change. And I would walk down the street with the old buildings and go up to our apartment. And my wife and I would sit and have cheese and a baguette and look out at the Mediterranean Sea. And I remember one day. It was in January. And so it's about 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. And back home, it would have been noon. And I remember looking on Facebook and seeing all of my friends at the winter business meetings for Missouri Realtors. And I remember sitting there thinking, um, I'll probably never have that opportunity again. And my wife said, "No, don't think that." And, you know, I think at that point, Kim, I realized community is really those people that we're around and we know. And even though it was so neat to live in Nice, France, there's just something cool about going to the grocery store and seeing people and talking to people uh, downtown when you go downtown. And so I miss that. Although last year I was in France, or this year I was in France in March for the MIPIM conference and with Missouri Realtors, and a lady was with me from Missouri, and we were on a side street of Nice after we'd eaten at a restaurant walking back to our hotel, and a lady goes, "John Mayfield, John Mayfield." And Janet, the lady that was with me, she was the president last year. She was like, "That is so weird. Here we are in a foreign country and someone recognizes you on the street." But so I guess I have community in Nice as well now, and you do build that wherever you go. I guess that is kind of neat. But community is just, to me, it's your local area. And I love how you said that. I think sometimes we do have different communities. I have a community in the realtor organization, both on a state and a national, but I also have a community with people here in the Farmington area. But I'm telling you what, community is you've got to stay active with your community, and you have to let people know that you're in real estate. Not that you want to shove it down their throat, but you don't want to hide your name badge, and you know you need to let people know. And there's ways you can do that. And so it's interesting. I went back, and when I was 50, 54, 55, went back and got my uh, master's degree. I think I told you I was 57. I think we went back and I said I was 57 when that happened, but I think I would have been 47 because in 2007, that's right, I was born in 1960. So I was 47 when I went through all of that. So just to bring our audience up to speed, which is still, that was a big
Mhm.
time in my life. But anyway, I went back and got my master's degree when I was 54. And there again, I thought to myself, you're too old to go back to college. And I always wanted to get my master's degree, and I got my degree in real estate. So my thesis paper was on what do successful real estate agents do to market themselves, or where do they get their business, and interviewed successful agents all over the country. And the bulk of the business comes, and NAR shows this as well, but the bulk of the business comes from your sphere of influence or your community, those people you know. So it's so important to work that group and be involved. That's kind of a long, drawn out answer for your
No,
question, but
no, that's perfect. That's perfect because I do believe that a lot of people are so busy posting new listings on Instagram that they are speaking, they think they're speaking to everyone, whereas they're actually speaking to no one.
yeah.
And it's really fascinating to see a lot of people come in thinking that they're going to do an entire social media initiative and don't realize that they have no substance behind that social media initiative.
That's a great point. And the other part of that podcast I listened to, or it was one of those on Dan Kennedy's, but he's a copywriter. But he said this, and I think you're onto something, and I really want the audience to know this because I think it applies to posting content online or sending out letters. But but he said you need to write copy as if you're in the shoes of the person who's going to read your post. What's going through their mind? Or, are they, if you're sending direct mail, you have to visualize that they're standing by the trash can while they're going through their direct mail. And what is that piece that's going to make them stop and open it and look at it? But when he said, write to them about what's going on in their lives, I think today people are
Yeah.
thinking about what you said. What's the economy? How's the real estate market going to be affected? Is my price going to go up or down, or what's happening in our local market? There's
Yep.
so many things that we could write and post and talk about that would be beneficial that we're not doing.
And share who you are. If
Exactly.
you love golf, put it in golf analogies. If you
Yeah,
love to bake, put
exactly.
it I that's what I did. I had Kim's Kitchen. That was my entire
Yeah,
thing. Why? Because kitchen's the heart of the home and I sell homes, not just houses. And I knew what my market was and I knew who my audience avatar was and I always try to put I still have people even though I have been retired out of frontline sales for the last 2 years, I still have people go, "Oh, I have that recipe in my recipe box," right?
yeah,
So share who you are. People do business with people they know, like, trust. And if you have not read the Bob Burr book of Go Givers and Go Givers Sell More, please, you know what? Do yourself a favor because it does share that you're having a conversation with that seller. And by the way, I'm a listing specialist, so I always pre-frame everything in the listing perspective. But you're having a conversation with the seller and you're having a conversation with your team and your spouse and your bank, you're having all these conversations. Well, guess what? They are too.
yeah,
So in a single conversation, there could be a dozen conversations. So be patient and share. Allow
exactly.
them to know, like, and trust you.
Yeah,
Okay, books. I really quickly want to dive into books. I know that you have a gazillion books, but these are the ones
yeah,
that really popped out to me because 5 minutes does not feel like it will overwhelm me. It was funny because I always talk about 500 doors, and I just had somebody. I have a coach. Everybody, if you don't have a coach, you're not going to the Olympics, folks. So I have a coach, and my coach goes, 500 doors feels really big. And it's like, I know, but that's the reality. If you have 250 or 500 doors in your community that you can serve and serve regularly and authentically, you can build a business. And I really liked this 5 minute series you have. And in here is the 5 minute real estate letters. Tell me what inspired you to write these because for me, I immediately attracted because it's like, oh, I got 5 minutes.
yeah. So the book, it's the one between the green and the white book. It's called 5 Minutes to a Great Real Estate Sales Meeting. That was my first book I wrote, and I was at my daughter's, holiday program at school, and I'm sitting there thinking about my sales meeting for the next day, and I had one of these, "John Mayfield, shame on you. You're supposed to be focused on your daughter's, choir program, not thinking about your sales meeting." And I always wanted to write a book. I love to write. I'll be honest, my grammar's probably not the best, but and my spelling, but with computers today, you can write anything, but I've always had a creative mind, and so I thought to myself, wouldn't it be and here's a tip for writers too. I always wanted to write these big business novels, and I went to a writer's workshop, and they said, "Write about what you're good at and what you know." So I thought, "Well, I know real estate, I'll focus on that." And that's when I started getting published in some magazines and different things, but I, um I thought to myself, wouldn't it be cool if I could develop a template, 52, one for each week, sales meeting ideas for brokers where all you had to do was take the meeting and just follow my roadmap. And if you want to add some of your own little items to it, you could. And so I was at an NAR conference and I was buying a book from an author, one of the vendors. She had a name badge on that said acquisitions editor. And I said, "Hey, I've got a great idea for a book." Like she probably heard that 1,000 times, over those 2 days. And she said, "Oh, really? What is it?" And I pitched it to her and she said, "I like that. Send me a proposal." And she gave me her card and I'm like, "Proposal? Now, now what do I do?" So I think I have the book back here and how to write a nonfiction proposal. And I sent it to her and she, asked some questions and we went back and forth for about a month and they gave me a contract and published the book and it was very successful. So then I said, why miss out on a good opportunity? I said, I think I could come up with some other ideas for 5 minutes for a 5 minute series. And they loved the idea. And so we did the letters book and did 5 minutes to a great real estate ad, which I still use today in my MLS copy that I um, that I use, and so that's kinda how all of that came about, and, you always take right behind me, I don't know if you can see, but, this book right here is 21 Mistakes Real Estate Brokers Make and How to Avoid Them. So when I sold my company and I'm unemployed and a non-compete clause, I'm in my truck and I'm like, if I could start my real estate office over again, what would I do differently? And lo and behold, I thought, well, that would be a good book. So that was a fun book to write, and I brought a co-author in just because I wanted a balance to make sure. But just to look back, if you could start your real estate career over, or if you could do something differently, and so that's kind of how all the book series went, and so
And
now we're actually, my daughter's helping me, and we're putting all the sales meetings. I kind of have a membership site we're working on and provide some training for their agents. So that's kind of exciting.
amazing, amazing. And what's fascinating is the average reader only reads about 30 minutes at a time. It's called fractional reading. This is a new
Right.
study. So the doing smaller bite-sized chunks for your audience, know your audience and give them smaller things. That's why the collaborative books are so popular because doing
Yeah.
networking books are it's a great way to network through the most select board, which is Amazon Author Central. Less than 5% of North American adults are actually posted in Amazon Central. Um, and it really, I think authorship, one way or another, even if it's only in a collaborative space, it proves that you're willing to put your time, effort, money, energy, insight, inspiration into actually putting it in a formalized platform.
Yes.
Um, John, you just mentioned I believe this is, I'm going to pull this back up. Where can people reach you? We have the globalrealestateschool.com.
Yeah.
Is that the best place for people to get a hold of you?
That's the best place for people to get a hold of me. Just go to globalrealestateschool.com. I also have a website that is johndmayfield.com. I should have registered John Mayfield, but John D is in Delta Mayfield.com. That's kind of my business tech guy, but my real estate school is really taken off. We're in 9 different states, and we provide training materials for uh, any state in the US. So I've got test materials to help you pass the test. But yeah, that's the best place to. They can find my podcast there and my YouTube channel and different things.
Amazing. All right. So I always ask, can you share with us a quote that really inspires you? I love to collect quotes. What would that
Yeah.
be?
So my mother's quote, or she always reminded me, is "All sunshine makes a desert." And, that just always we have to remember that you're not gonna and through my trials and tribulations, I quoted that a lot. It's just to remind myself that not all sunshine makes a desert, and there was a song I still listen to all the time by Norman Brown. He's from Kansas City, a smooth jazz artist, but he had a song called "Better Days Ahead," and, I always played that song, and when I told that little story about the baguette and being in France to the Missouri realtors that day that I cried, and there were about 4 or 500 there, I, uh I remember we were having some technology glitches during the voting, and I asked them to put some music on, and believe it or not, they put on Norman Brown's song, "Better Days Ahead," and I reminded the group there, I said, "I used to listen to this song all the time during my blueberry tribulation, just to be reminded that there are better days ahead." And what's interesting, Kim, is the very next day, I had 2 people who were in that room. One was a sound person, he wasn't even a realtor, and they both sent me emails and said, "Could you tell me the name of that song? Because I just would like something to help keep me motivated." And, so we all go through challenges, and you know what? Just remind yourself, all sunshine makes a desert. You're gonna have some rainy days. It just helps us grow and do better.
I couldn't have said that any better. And that's it for us today here at 500 Doors Real Estate Podcast, because behind every door is an opportunity, is a human being you can share, lead, and guide. And it gives you an opportunity to shine and be the best in the industry, the best in your community, the best human being you can be. We do have a Facebook group. I would love for all of you to come and join us at our Facebook group, and that is Real Estate Success with 500 Doors. And you're going to be seeing more of John and I work together because I absolutely love this guy. Like
Well, thank you
I,
so
I
much.
think
Yeah.
you are phenomenal, John. And guys, do check out John's podcast. We'll have all that information in the description in this podcast. And until next time, be kind to yourself and be kind to your community. I'm Kim Hayden, and this is 500